Get into this a little bit more. What I want to say is that first and foremost, I would love to see more armies like myself. I'm a 2019 army. I'm not that long here, but especially older armies, whatever armies you want, like armies who have been around since the beginning, armies that are new. I would love to see armies react to BTS content. I don't want to see non-armies react to BTS content anymore. I don't want to see people who are like react channels just doing kind of, oh wow, they're so cool, that's great, for like 20 minutes. Like that stuff is cool and it has its place, and a lot of people do it really, really well. But I would love to see more armies take over this market. It's an open market for us, and I would love to see more armies who know the songs and know the history use reaction videos as a way to discuss the songs and the music videos and the times, and the information. I want to see that. I want to see armies sharing these moments, and I want them to share. I want them to share how much these moments, these songs, and everything mean to them. So without further ado, today I'm going to talk about a specific song, and the reason I'm going to talk about this specific song is because I want to get back to a sort of point that I make about J-Hope all the time. And hopefully, throughout this year, I plan on doing stuff for each of the members of BTS during their birthday season, so keep me accountable to that. But what I want to do with J-Hope is I want to get back into this conversation that I've had a long time ago, in which I talked about how people underrate J-Hope as a rapper. Here we go, guys. We're talking about hip hop, hip hop. Hip it to the hip hop, and you don't stop to rock until you bang bang boogie to the jump to boogie to the boogie. Here we go, hip. You don't get no pain, but no better than that. No pain, no better than that. And just saying, better than that. Where my army at? Wait, where's the chorus? Bring the. Give me the hook. Give me the hook. Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop is bigger than hop, hip hop, hip hop. Let's go, guys. We're gonna talk about rap today. Okay, rap. What do you guys know about rap? What do you guys know about rap? Let me tell you something. I have been a hip-hop fan since I was about 8 or 9 years old, as many of you know. I first got into hip-hop through Fort Minor. Let's just go through the whole thing. I first got into hip-hop through Fort Minor, through Linkin Park, really. So that's kind of embarrassing. But what Fort Minor and Linkin Park were really cool at was featuring amazing rappers from the underground oftentimes on their records. They had that Reanimation album featuring dudes like Pharoah Monch, featuring dudes like Charlie Tuna. And then Fort Minor dropped their album, and that album featured people like Black Thought, okay, and Self-Titled. What do you guys know about Self-Titled, okay? So shout out to Mike Shinoda and his impeccable taste in hip-hop and rappers. And that got me into hip-hop through there. Another rapper that Fort Minor featured on their mixtape, True Story, Lupe Fiasco, who is one of my favorite rappers of all time. And a common thread with all of these rappers, maybe not Mike Shinoda so much, love you Mike, but not necessarily the illest lyrical rapper of all time. But dudes like Lupe Fiasco, Charlie Tuna, Self-Titled, and then people who I go on to listen to like A$AP Rock, Kendrick Lamar, of course, one of the most popular acts out there. A wide variety of MCs to this day. People like the Griselda Gang, Navy Blue, who I'm very into right now. Great rapping is great rapping, and I'm a little Asian kid who has always struggled to find really great rappers who are Asian being represented. I mean, they obviously don't buzz a lot. I don't know what you guys know about MC Jin. Y'all gonna learn Chinese, but he had his moment. He was a very skilled rapper, but he did not really blow up. But it was only until I saw BTS when I saw really popular Asian, East Asian specifically, to be clear, because there's many different denominations of Asia. There's many different parts of Asia, guys. But Korean rappers specifically, who were really, really, really popular and had a lot of fans and were popular in the pop music sphere, blowing up, but were also really genuinely good at rapping. And I feel like a lot of people kind of overlook this aspect. And I've talked to a lot of Korean hip-hop heads. I actually like a lot of Korean hip-hop. There's a lot of it that I don't like, but there's a lot of it that I do like. You guys should check out people like Wonstein and Kitty Boy and Zion T, Justice. there's a lot of really talented rappers in Korean hip hop, but a lot of Korean hip hop fans are very reticent towards anybody that they consider Korean idol rappers. And that's because a lot of idol rappers are not that good at rapping. I'm just going to say it. A lot of idol rappers that are, popular right now, they're good at rapping. They're not terrible. You don't see really terrible idol rappers anymore necessarily. But there are not necessarily a lot that stand out in this way, where they really truly reflect something unique and authentic in what they're doing to the point where they're not really replicable. And that's truly what makes artists great, right? And, I'm just a lowly kid, a Dominican Chinese kid from New York who grew up around hip hop for such a long time. I know how to rap. I know a lot about rapping. I know things about rapping that are very technical details as well as very abstract things. But the one thing that's the most important is, your voice, your unique quality, and what you communicate about yourself to your audience. If you can do something to that nature where you can communicate something unique to your audience and really resonate with people and, be proficient at the same time, that's a very, 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 very valuable thing. And we find it in all three rappers of BTS. We find that in RM, who is an incredible poetic wordsmith. We see that in Yoongi, a producer rapper extraordinaire with amazing emotion and aggression, as well as nimbleness with flows. But we also see it with J-Hope. And the thing about J-Hope is, in these circles, these Korean hip-hop circles, these hip-hop circles, these K-pop circles, J-Hope is always, he's good, but he's cool, but he's not really that good as a rapper, right? I mean, RM and RM and Suga, they're great rappers, of course, but J-Hope, is J-Hope really a great rapper? I'm here to tell you he is. He absolutely is. And if you're a fucking ARMY, you know that shit. If you're a true OT7 ARMY, like everybody in my chat is right now, you know that J-Hope is a genuinely really good rapper. But you might not know exactly how to explain it. And so what I hope to do today is react to one of my favorite J-Hope records. One of my favorite moments in which J-Hope demonstrates his lyrical proficiency and his technical quality and his abstract, awesome qualities as an artist. And hopefully through some of the terminology I'm going to give you guys are going to understand some of the technical things. But what I really want to make clear is that it is not just technical stuff. You can have all of the greatest technical skills as a rapper and still not be great, and still be, Joyner Lucas. Not to diss Joyner Lucas, but come on. I don't think that people consider him one of the greatest rappers of all time, even though he's incredibly technically skilled, and could probably, body me on a beat for sure. So what I want to do is talk about J-Hope, and what I specifically want to talk about is this song right here. It's called 1verse. You guys know it. We all know it. So before we get into it, first and foremost, let's talk about the beat. What is the beat? It's a beat by a good old rapper named The Game. Well, it's The Game and Skrillex. It is. This is a reproduce by JDP. I'm not sure if this was used by J-Hope in his version. It's called El Chapo. I am the God. El Chapo. I am the God. Right? It's a pretty fire ass beat. It's kind of like dubstep influence, but it is mostly influenced by a lot of southern rap sounds. So here's one thing that we should get clear off the bat. There's sounds that we hear in this kind of beat. Let's just bring the beat back really quickly. In this beat, we hear different sounds, and we associate these sounds to a certain sound that people call trap. And here's the thing about the term trap is it's a very loose term, and I don't like when people just throw it around. Trap is a specific reference to areas in the South is where it originated, in Atlanta specifically, wherein drugs are trafficked and crime is committed. It's in very difficult, poor neighborhoods. And trap music emerged from that. And what trap music was, it came from artists like T.I. and other artists who came from these neighborhoods, who came from these lifestyles, who rapped about what they were going through, what they were doing with their illicit activities, right? And that was what trap music was called. Young Jeezy, another artist who made trap music. Plies. And the sounds from trap music were very oriented by different sounds that came from the 90s and the 80s in terms of where hip hop was. You know, the South kind of adopted slower sounding beats than, you know, up north in the Northeast, where New York, you know, hip hop originates in New York. The typical New York beat is called the boom bap beat, where you get like a loop of a drum and you repeat it. That's how hip hop started, and it goes like and shit like that, right? That's what you call a boom bap beat. That's a whole other conversation, right, for another day. But a trap beat, I don't like calling beats like this trap beats. I don't even like talking about the EDM genre trap that emerges from trap beats from the South, where they take these sort of sounds and then make it into this very heavy EDM dubstep influenced genre. Sounds really cool, but for me, I feel like that term is a little bit overused and kind of, you know, slightly offensive, uncomfortable, I guess, because a lot of people who, you know, make trap music will tell you what trap music is, and certain shit is not trap music. Now, with that being said, there are certain characteristics of trap beats that you will listen to and you'll hear often. There is an 808. Let me see if I can pull up my FL Studio really quickly. I happen to make beats, so I know a couple of things about how you make a beat, right? And a trap beat, contains something that's called the 808. The 808 comes from the 808 drum machine. They called them 808s for short because that was the bass. That was like a particular type of bassy kick that comes from the 808 drum machine that was used in the 80s. It was used in a lot of 80s hip hop. And to this day, it's still used and blended and merged and skewed in all types of different ways. But it retains that same quality, and it retains that old school name of 808. And this is what it sounds like. Or this. Any of these are 808s. You know, they're combining the sound of a very round electronic kick drum with a bass, a rumbling bass. So you get a lot of those in trap beats. You get a lot of hi-hats. And in a trap beat, you might get like a hi-hat pattern like this, you know, where it's just like the same. It's just like 16, you know. And then you might get a roll somewhere. There's a lot of rolls in this El Chapo beat that you want to notice. A lot of hat rolls that sound like this. That kind of thing. And then you make the hats roll all over the place, etc., etc. So this is all to say that this is not necessarily an Atlanta Southern trap beat that J-Hope is rapping on for El Chapo. It's a blend of different styles, and Skrillex, who is an EDM and dubstep producer by trade, takes that sound, makes it really hard, makes it really electronic, but still retains some of these hip-hop stylings, and makes this really powerful, danceable beat that The Game, who is a sort of legendary rapper from Compton, who was very popular in the 2000s and is very lyrically proficient, raps over. And so he takes the sample also with his horn. That's what a sample is. We can't get into what samples are now. So what you hear in this beat is you hear a really heavy kick drum, you hear a really heavy snare. You're probably hearing an 808 right now, and then you're gonna hear some hi-hats come in right around here, I think. You got a lot of triplets. That's a triplet because it's 1 2 3 1 2 3, right? So basically, I'm just setting the scene for you to understand the beat that J-Hope is rapping on. And this was a popular beat in like 2013, 2012. I remember when I was in college, I had friends. No, I don't even later than that. I had friends that in college danced over this song. It was released in 2015, yeah. So J-Hope later that same year, you know, this comes out during a time period, I believe, when J-Hope is still sort of emerging and coming into his own in terms of how he projects as part of the group, in terms of his particular dynamic. I mean, he was killing shit in those first few albums, but he was still kind of regarded a bit, you know, he hadn't really had that chance yet to sort of flex his muscles. And J-Hope comes from a background where he is a dancer, of course, as everybody knows, and that's his primary skill. He's an amazing b-boy dancer, and he does all these different types of dancing as well. But he learns how to rap when he's a trainee in Big Hit. And so it's really amazing to see what he does on this song. Without further ado, we're 15 minutes into this rant, and I'm finally going to play J-Hope one verse for you, and then I'm going to comment about it and tell you what I think. So let's full screen it, and let's talk about it. And I'm not gonna get too in depth about the lyrical meanings, but I do have a Tulsit Pangtan page open that you guys should check out, and I'll show you in a bit. So there's J-Hope finding his beat. Hey. So what I want to break down now is basically rhyme schemes, right? And I'm gonna basically be pointing out rhyme schemes throughout this, because I think rhyme schemes are one of the more important things to pay attention to when it comes to a person who's a really good rapper. Now, what do we talk about when we're talking about rhyme schemes? As you guys know, a rhyme is a word that, you know, sounds like another word, right? And in hip hop, you know, the most basic rhymes, you know, are often kind of looked down upon, especially when you don't rhyme them in a creative way. In terms of how powerful, like how good you are as a rapper, you want to be able to have more complex types of rhymes. So a typical, you know, if you get started as a rapper, you might say, you know, I gotta go see my mom, go to youtube.com, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's a very basic rhyme that people can all see coming and kind of predict and da-da-da. But then you develop as a lyricist, and a lot of people start to use more complex rhyme schemes to display how technically sound they are as a rapper. And that's something that J-Hope is really, really good at. So far, he's only giving you, he's giving you a pretty basic rhyme scheme with a very like kind of staccato, 이름, J-Hope na 이름. And then you know he rhymes 이름 with 그림 치를, 챗팍 위를, 가치를, right? And then he says, J-Hope is my name, and I'll begin putting oil. I always stop the spinning wheel. I'll put on my value. So I want to take a look at those lyrics afterwards to sort of really break them down. But I just want you guys to notice the rhyme schemes and to notice sort of that he's not just rhyming one syllable, right? He's using polysyllabic rhyme schemes, is what we call them. So a polysyllabic rhyme scheme is, instead of saying dog and frog, I might say, you know, go to the beach with, you know, colder than each. I don't know, some bullshit like that, right? And it's kind of difficult, right? It's difficult to figure out 4 syllables that rhyme in a row, right? And then you also want to pay attention to rhyme patterns. So a lot of people rhyme with end rhymes solely. I'm gonna go to the mall, then I'm gonna give my mom a call. I'm giving a lot of rhymes about my mother. And that's a very basic rhyme scheme. It's an end rhyme. But a lot of people who are really proficient at rapping and technical aspects of rapping, they're able to use internal rhyme schemes. Instead of just rhyming at the end, they can give you rhymes in the middle of the rhyme. So this is what he does here. And he does a very simple flow here where he kind of gives you he gives you 4 rhymes in 2 bars with this kind of internal rhyme following it the same as the end rhyme. So very basic, and he's basically, you know, claiming his spot. So what I want you to notice too is that the rhyme scheme a lot of times is expanding now. Are you guys following? Are you following a little bit? Are you following me? Nicki Minaj. What the rhyme scheme is changing and adapting it. He's still using that end rhyme. He's still using kidur. He's still doing that internal rhyme scheme. Tidur. Internal and end rhyme schemes. But then he's also expanding them to add a 3rd syllable, which is the a. He says kalpirul. He says chachirul. And so you know, he does this before too. He says kalchirul. He says mehankachidul. I don't know how my pronunciation is doing, but there you go. And so that is an extra rhyme. And so these kinds of internal rhyme schemes and how he blends it and he still does it in a way that's kind of fun and bouncy, I think is one of the signature things with J-Hope. People always talk about J-Hope's flow, and I think it's a lot more than just flow. It's about the delivery and the energy that you deliver the rhyme with that really makes the flow accentuate. And the fact that he's able to use these flows while still blending them with these kind of complex rhyme schemes and on these beats that are much more dancey and not oriented necessarily towards technical rhyming. When you listen to a beat like this, it's much more oriented towards dancing, towards, you know, jumping around. It's not necessarily the type of beat that you would go in on lyrically. In order to do so, you often have to speed up, and you often have to find really creative ways to make your flow retain that bounciness, so people still want to nod their head and bounce to it in a way where they can party to it. But at the same time, you're still flowing and being creative and really saying something. So let's see how he keeps going. See, he also rhymes kwasichung with chachiru, which I just think is really tight. So this is another. This is the internal rhyme schemes and the end rhymes are now starting to get really complex. Let's repeat that for a second. When he says 불카춘이 신은 참관함요. I'm really trying. I don't speak Korean, but I'm really trying, guys. He says 불카춘이 신은 참관함요 방환하기. Sorry. So what you're seeing now is that he has this end rhyme that is actually 방환하기. That's 4 syllables, right? Now he's gone from 3 syllables to 4 syllables. He's practically counting up. 방환하기, and then he says 남발하기. So now he has a 4-syllable polysyllabic end rhyme. But then he's also adding internal rhymes with this triplet flow that's kind of building up. And it's pretty difficult to pull off and to write. When he's using these syllables like 불카춘이 신은 참화, the ah syllable is coming out. So now he's still, going with this end rhyme. Very classic sort of manipulation now of more of the different rhyme patterns. So now he's using that end rhyme and he's building it into an internal rhyme scheme now. 남발하기, 희롱의 파파라지, 다 하나같이 몬두이 두귀로 겨냥하지. He's not even using, and this is also clever too, because if you'll notice, right, in the romanization, this is spelled with EO and this is spelled with an ah. So this indicates to us that these are different vowels. And if you read Hangul, you can tell that these are different vowels. This is not an ah, right? This is an o. But he's using it and he's manipulating it with his accent, with his, he has a particular, what they call a saturi from Gwangju. And he uses that, he uses just his sort of, just the sort of ways in which rappers play with words to make it still rhyme with the ah. So now we got some internal rhymes going on. So now he's changing up now he's not even ending with the end rhyme again. Chagahagil, real. That's not even ending at the same time. So he's just playing around a little. Okay, I'm not even. See how that flows off the tongue? Real. Wait, hold on. 남겨놓는 안서 이게 내 조함용 하가는 함요 사로. That's 4. See, he's got 1 bar where he's using the same. This is very classic. This is very classic internal rhyme scheme manipulation. Now he's going into he's now used in 1 bar 4 different rhymes, and they're all polysyllabic rhymes because there's 2 syllables. Like he just throws that one in there, and that's crazy, man. What he just did is crazy there. I'm getting a little bit excited. I need you guys to hear this again. there's a lot of stuff happening there, but basically he's continuing this crazy end rhyme pattern, or this crazy internal rhyme pattern, switching up the end rhyme again, over and over again. So when you switch up the end rhyme like that, like if I say to you, you know, I gotta go to the mall, I gotta give my mom a call, you know, if you say, boom, I'm gonna go to the mall, I'm gonna give my mom a call. That's pretty easy to follow. You can feel where the end rhyme is gonna come, and that's its own. That sounds good in its own right. But if I switch the positioning of the end rhyme to make it earlier or later, it keeps you on your toes and it keeps you hanging with what I'm actually trying to say. I'm gonna go to the mall, gonna give my mama a call. If y'all wanna, you know what I mean? It's just oh, I'm so corny. But what I'm trying to say is like this is actually really, really technically difficult to write. And the first he switches the end rhyme, he continues the internal rhyme scheme. Ano macho kyoryo saga gi. He doesn't even go, and again, this but he goes saga gi. That's crazy. This is another time where he plays with the end rhyme too, where he brings the first end rhyme to be really early and then does a crazy internal rhyme scheme and then brings the end rhyme back at the end. See how many different boy. Subaki dogo nan kugo kegi. Kugo kegi we hit. Subaki dogo nan kugo. Kugo kegi kudogo mirogo miram yakina nem. Like he's playing with the you think that the internal rhyme is the u, and then he starts bringing in the e and the d. Listen to this. Where's the internal rhyme? That's difficult. I'm telling you guys right now, man. This is difficult to do. This is difficult to do. It's very difficult. What you're also gonna notice about what J-Hope does, and what people have been pulling out a lot, is that he changes his voice up so much. He goes, and then he starts to whisper. Like, it's crazy the amount of different places that he goes. Now he's getting into this rough part that he does a lot. It's crazy that he keeps that and he doesn't blow out his voice. This we're gonna get back to this in a second. And then we get a very classic hook to close out the freestyle. So if you read this translation, you're like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of different ways in which he's wording things. I haven't spoken to Korean speakers about this, but he has a very funny way of using these different terms and ideas. These different rhymes with words that, you know, don't necessarily seem to fit there. It's pretty crazy. Because, you know, it's very, very difficult to make sense of what he's saying upon just listening to it. But then you read something like Turse Pangtan and her breakdowns. And so maybe we're, you know, kissing ass a little bit because we're armies. And maybe low-key this shit doesn't make sense. I doubt it, because I think that there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of pick up from here. So what I'm going to use this for, and I'm not going to go over this too much because I want to close this segment. This, if you want to check out anybody's breakdown, any breakdowns of BTS's lyrics, go to Turse Bangtan and other blogs like hers, but especially Turse Bangtan. I always trust hers. and you can see the rhyme schemes being pointed out, and then you can see the wordplay. So you can see that J-Hope makes use of a lot of wordplay in his rhyming. Now this is something that's very important as well. You can have a lot of crazy rhyme schemes, but if you're not saying shit, if you're not saying anything interesting, it takes away from what you're doing as a rapper. But J-Hope also has a real fun love for twisting words to have double meanings and triple meanings, or to kind of make little references to things. He's so good about it. The Ma City verse is one of the best examples of that in terms of the Kwangju uprising reference that he makes here. But here, there's wordplay here where he says, I stopped the treadmill that's always been running in light of my value. And then you have to break it down in Korean. This can be value or accounting cigarettes unit for cigarettes. Set fire, light up, goes with the second meaning of da da da. But given the context, the line should be interpreted as I let my value rise, right? There's a particular line in here too that's really funny. Be a voyeur of my talent, my dick. There's a whole bit of wordplay there, but I want to talk about Tutu for a second, guys. I want to talk about Tutu. As appropriate for my age, Tutu to the ground. This man was 22 when he made this verse, bro. I know this is a cold. I know he came up with this one and he was like, ooh, Tutu, as in the two numbers of 22, right? And that's his age. As appropriate for my age, Tutu to the ground. But also Tutu, like you're spitting. And then he also has an onomatopoeia, kak, as like to preface it. That shit was crazy. And so there's a lot of different things that J-Hope does when he raps that I just think are really tight, because he's doing things that lyrical, the book of lyrical rapping 101 is always like, okay, are your flows tight? Okay, are you using crazy rhyme schemes? And are you, doing wordplay? Are you making plays on words? Are you saying anything interesting? And so I think J-Hope, has always, in all his verses, demonstrated a really strong ability for doing all the shit that, honestly, like a lot of West Coast underground rappers you will find will do this type of stuff. If you listen to somebody like, I guess Freestyle Fellowship, or somebody like AC Alone, these rappers from the West Coast have made a sort of thing of their ability to use different complex rhyme schemes. And this kind of thing, you see some elements of it in a lot of different parts of hip hop now. New York rappers have been doing it for a long time as well. MF Doom, rest in peace. He was a person that was incredibly adept at using really intricate rhyme schemes. He's the greatest of all time at that, probably. And he was using them in a way that made sense, but was so off the beaten path. And I think, I'm not here to compare J-Hope to MF Doom or to any of the titans of lyrical rapping, but when you read his lyrics, even as somebody who doesn't speak Korean, you can understand that he learned some things from those schools, and that's a testament to how much he gives a shit. Because this is a dude that wasn't rapping until he was in his late teens, right? When he became a trainee, a big hit. So if it's 2015 when this song comes out, that means he's only been rapping for about 4 or 5 years, and he's already picking up these tendencies as a rapper, even years prior to this, where he's doing things that are very lyrically adept. And that is incredible, because that's not even considered his primary skill. And if you take into account the fact that he's so really good with melodies and so good with voice changes and playing with the sound of his voice to make the song sound a certain way. I mean, the 1verse is the perfect example of that. The way that he starts in this really quiet place, builds up when the beat, that's one of the most ill things you've ever heard. And you can't stop. You can't deny how cool that is to hear. Because he's genuinely really great with his musicality as a rapper. I think that's the biggest thing I take away from J-Hope as a rapper. He is great with wordplay, and he has a lot of really interesting things to say. I think that his disease verse is an example of a verse where he's, making some really interesting commentary about work culture, right? And this is the biggest thing. We'll get to that in a second. But J-Hope has always used these rhyme schemes and these different flow patterns and these different playing with his voice to sort of play with the musicality, which is so in line with his dancing ability, playing with sound and playing with the rhythm and cadence and energy and making it so that you really feel like you're going somewhere every time that he's rapping. Now, a lot of people feel like they don't necessarily like his rhymes, they don't necessarily like the sound of his voice, but I feel like there's a lot of rappers who have, voice timbres that you don't necessarily take to upon first listening. I didn't, if you listen to, early A$AP Rock, or if you listen to Danny Brown, these are dudes that have really voices, and a lot of people will be completely put off by that. Now, that's not to compare J-Hope to A$AP Rock or Danny Brown, two of the illest rappers alive, but why would we use that as a detritus? Why would we use that as a thing against him? I think it's because people constantly miss the point, right? First of all, if you wanted to see technical ability in J-Hope, you could. It's not hard. It's evident in all of his shit. From whether he's being melodic and smooth on a song like to a song like 1verse where he's just rhyming and doing all these crazy rhyme schemes and doing this wordplay. You could easily see that and say, this guy knows how to rap. This guy really knows how to rap, and whether it's your taste or it's not your taste, he's skilled at it. He's skilled at it on a level where it's not necessarily, you don't have to say he's the best in the world, but he's skilled. But people don't necessarily take to that, and I think that's because a lot of the way in which people in K-music look at hip-hop is superficial. A lot of Korean hip-hop fans and a lot of K-pop fans only like to look at the way a thing looks and sounds and the image it projects and judge how cool they think it is based off of that. Do you understand what I mean? If it's not the fashion that a person wears, if it's not the way that a person acts, if it's not a person's accent, if it's not a person's beard, whatever, if it's not a person's sound of their voice on the if it's not what they're talking about, what the type of subject matter, if it's not giving off that I want to make money and get a lot of girls type shit, which is fine, I listen to mostly that's the music I listen to anyway, right? But if it's not that, people just say it's not good, it's not dope, and I feel like that's a problem, because whether it's for you or it's not, I don't care if you listen to only the most debaucherous of music. I don't care if you only listen to like old school 50 Cent, if you only listen to 3 6 Mafia, whatever. It's one thing to like something, and it's another thing to disrespect anything else. And what J-Hope has done and what the rest of BTS have done as rappers is they've done something else. And whether you like it or whether you don't like it, there's nobody else that's really doing it. And I don't just mean that in the sense of, they're blending K-pop, but they're doing all these different genres. And I mean as hip-hop artists, right? Because they are idols, they are musicians, they have a lot of different interests. They're not confined to trying to just be rappers, right? They're not trying to just be in the K-hip-hop realm. They're obviously doing something else, and they're not trying to compete like that. So I don't necessarily think it's even fair to try to make them compete, because that's not what they're trying to do. But they are still hip-hop artists. They are still rappers. And when you look at what they do as hip-hop artists, there's not a lack of skill. But what there is an association with and a championing of ideas and sounds and styles that are not looked at as hip-hop. You rapping about, mental health. That doesn't really jive. You're rapping about how you love people, how you love yourself. You're rapping about how, the economy is bad. You're rapping about how capitalism is a problem. You're rapping about how people need to pursue their own dreams without worrying about pressures from society. You're rapping about all these different things, right? You're not rapping about shooting people. You're not rapping about drugs. You're not rapping about alcohol and things like that. And there's a big problem that armies make here too. Because armies will sit here and say, in my chat and other people's chat, and talk about, that's not real rap. You're talking about all the rappers, they just talk about drinking and cars and girls, and that's not cool. that's not really cool. And then BTS, they're the only cool da da da. And it's like, shut up. Let people talk about cars. Let people talk about money. Let people relay their own experiences. These people come from different backgrounds, man. Whoever you're talking about, whether it's somebody from the Dominican Republic doing a dembow song, where you're talking about people, whining on each other and having sex, to, somebody from New York talking about, gang violence, whatever. These are people relaying what they want to talk about. And as long as it's authentic and it's coming from them, don't shut people out. That's all I'm saying. Don't say that it's just whack. But what I will say, too, is to the other end, to people who are, K-hip-hop fans, to other K-pop fans, to hip-hop fans that aren't really interested in BTS like that, is don't shut this down either. Because there's a lot of people that are doing other stuff. There's a lot of people that are in K-hip-hop right now that will rap about getting girls and rap about wanting girls and da-da-da. There's not really a lot of people in K-hip-hop that are making accessible rap records about the economy, about mental health, about these things. And BTS are in a lane all to their own. And to my mind, in terms of whatever genre, whatever culture you want to talk, like whatever norms you want to adopt, to my mind, that is what makes somebody a great artist, is when you're doing your thing. And it might not be for everybody, okay? It might not be for everybody. Danny Brown might not be for anybody. But XXX is a unique record. Triple X is a unique record. It is a beautiful record for many people who can relate to it. And nobody else has done it since then. And anybody who could try to do it, it's just not Danny Brown. And BTS, it's poppy. Oh, they're so squeaky clean. They're dancing. They wear makeup. Da da da. Cool. What's wrong with that? That's them. And they're doing it with complete authenticity. And they're putting absolute passion and love into it. And they're doing it with skill. I've just broken down to you for about 30 minutes. Rhyme schemes, bro. Wordplay. Different flow changes. Voice changes. Tamper. Like, it's crazy the kinds of skill level that these rappers are at, including J-Hope. And the thing is, people look at RM and Suga and put them in this unfair light. Because they're like, oh, well, RM, he used to be this, he used to rap before he was in BTS, of course. He was kind of well known in forums, and people will say, people will look at his track record and the things that he's rapped over and the way that he's rapped and say, okay, well, I know that he can rap. And the same thing with Yoongi, right? The same thing with Suga. And when people look at J-Hope, they're like, oh, this is this dancing kid who sometimes is singing and he's goofy. He's from Gwangju. He's pretty, whatever. This guy, he's not that. He's not hip-hop. And what I have to say, man, especially if you're Asian, you don't get to tell anybody who the fuck hip-hop is. You don't get to tell. And if you're a Korean hip-hop fucking fan, if you're a Korean hip-hop artist and you're sitting there talking about this isn't real hip-hop because it's gay, because it's this and this and that, who the fuck are you? It was gay motherfuckers in New York City years before you came out with any attempt at a song that were doing crazy shit in hip-hop. And that's not even BTS. So if you really want to, I feel like if we as Asian people and as Korean people especially wants to put forward a new generation of great hip-hop artists from our side of the world, because we're just guests in hip-hop. This is not our house. This is black people's culture. And they graciously let us participate in it. If we're going to participate in it, let's champion a variety of different people. Let's not champion just the people that are imitating what they're hearing in America. Let's champion people that are doing their own thing. Even if it seems like it's not cool, even if it seems like it's played out or it's too clean, it's too squeaky clean, whatever, let that shit win. Let that shit eat. And let that shit represent to a lot of people an opportunity for a new type of expression. That's what music is supposed to be about. That's what all the great hip-hop artists will tell you hip-hop is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about being yourself. It's supposed to be about not just talking about the streets and talking about shit that you don't care about because you want to be respected as hip-hop, as real hip-hop. You got to do your own thing. And there's just a lot of posturing in K-music to me. And I'm not a Korean person. I don't speak Korean, so it's not so much that I can really speak on. But in terms of the people who are out here in the West that consume it and talking English about it, you would think that they know everything about hip-hop, bro. You would think that they know. It seems like they know everything to them, And then you hear them and they just break things down. Oh, is it a trap beat or is it a boom bap beat? And as for me, as a person who was a 10-year-old who knew the difference between, well, maybe not a 10-year-old, who was a 14-year-old who knew the difference between an underground West Coast song and an underground New York City song, who could tell you the difference, between what Mos Def was doing, and what Biggie was doing. For you to characterize all of that shit as boom bap? Are you kidding me? For you to characterize anything that sounds like Memphis hip hop, Texas hip hop, Southern, Atlanta hip hop, Tennessee. Well, Memphis isn't Tennessee. All these different areas in the South. Florida hip hop, and for you to say, "Oh, that's trap." Is it trap? Trap? New Orleans music is not trap. It's New Orleans hip hop, bro. It can be trap. But Manny Fresh is not doing the same beats that fucking DJ Toomp was. And if you don't know who those people are, you don't need to talk anything about hip-hop, bro. You don't need to say shit about a trap beat and talk about who's hip-hop and who's not hip-hop. Just enjoy it. Just sit back, listen to what you want to listen to. But don't be acting... Don't come out here and act like you're hip-hop authority number one. You don't know the difference between a DJ Toomp beat for T.I. and a Manny Fresh beat for Lil Wayne or for Cash Money was? And the difference between that and what Master P was doing before that, and you say that that's trap, and then you say what the sounds that are now. I've talked to people where they're just like, oh, when you listen to Korean hip hop, it sounds a lot like hip hop now. It's that trap sound. And no, stop right there. There is no Korean trap music. There are no Korean traps. Start there. There's Korean poverty. But there's no Atlanta in Korea, bro. There's Korean poverty. There's Korean crime. There's all that shit. But that shit does not look or sound like the trap. So even if we're going to use that term, let's stop. Even if we're going to put that aside. Manny Fresh type beat does not sound like a Ronnie J type beat. And if you're sitting here and listening to fucking Nice for What by Drake and thinking, oh yeah, this is the trap beat, you don't know what you're talking about. And so there's a lot of people that are just interested only in the posturing and not in the technicalities. They don't give a shit about rhyme schemes. They don't give a shit about uniqueness. They don't give a shit about any of it. They don't know where any of this stuff comes from. And then they want me to sit here and expect them to say, oh, J-Hope is not that good as a rapper. He's a whack rapper. And expect me to accept it. I'm at least going to talk my shit a little bit. Because it's Hobie's birthday. And there's a lot of songs that you need to get into. I've listed many of them. And so if you want to know anything about hip-hop, maybe read the book How to Rap. Maybe watch some old rap documentaries, etc., etc. But listen to me right now. You don't know as much about hip-hop as you think you do if you think that guy can't rap. You don't. He's not your cup of tea. He's not, your favorite rapper. He doesn't sound the way you want him to. You're not into BTS. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to be into BTS. I don't need to force people to be into BTS. Love what you love. Do what you gotta do, bro. I love a lot of stuff. And so I can understand somebody who listens to some of the stuff I listen to not wanting to listen to BTS, right? But check your knowledge. Check your knowledge a little bit. You don't know what a polysyllabic rhyme scheme is, bro? And this is not even to say, I see armies in the replies all the time talking about, oh, you don't even know anything about rhyme patterns and da-da-da. And you sound corny. Because we don't even need to go there. If we're talking about skill, we can talk about skill. But most of you guys don't even know the difference between who's just a good rapper and who's a skilled rapper. Because a good rapper doesn't need to be skilled in technical aspects of rapping that has been established in the traditions of hip-hop. You could be Playboi Carti and be one of the most influential artists out here and be one of the most listened to artists out here and not do a single polysyllabic rhyme scheme. So that shit is corny anyway. But if we're going to talk about skill, here's the facts. And if we're going to talk about uniqueness, here's the facts. And if they have both, then what's the problem? If J-Hope has both, what's the problem? So the next time that you talk to somebody who tells you that J-Hope is not a good rapper, somebody in Korean hip hop, some Korean hip hop fan, some hip hop fan. J-Hope's not a good rapper. Put on a Manny Fresh beat and be like, what sound is this? And if they say trap, you know all that you need to know. You know all that you need to know. And that's the end of my long-winded rant.